Okay, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. It's Tim Taylor here in London. I'm the Program Manager for Smart Sustainable Districts and like to give you a warm welcome to this webinar on attractive, resilient districts. So the Smart Sustainable Districts program has been running for over 2 years now, and a great deal of knowledge and experience has already been gathered in districts including London, Utrecht, Berlin, and Paris, or cities with district projects in those cities have successfully developed and taken a systems approach to developing attractive, sustainable, resilient, and cost-efficient urban developments. So we look forward to sharing some of this knowledge and learning with you this afternoon. So we're going to start with a short video presentation, after which we look forward to presentations from Franz, Martin, and they will explain the core approaches that they've taken to connecting urban functions and nature in integrated urban adaptation projects, otherwise known as blue-green solutions. Then Jeanette from the municipality of Utrecht will illustrate her experiences and some specific projects examples that have been used as part of the planning and transformation for the Utrecht New Centre. So we're looking forward to that. During the presentations, you can ask any questions you want via the chat box in the side menu, as I said before. We will address any clarification questions straight after each presentation, but others we'll save up for discussion at the end of the webinar. We're aiming we'll finish the main webinar within an hour, and the webinar is being recorded. And then, if possible, and a couple of technical requirements pending, we'll be able to stay online with the presenters for some time afterwards for some further discussion after the official webinar. So on that note, Arno, who is in Utrecht today, will play the video. Thanks, Arno.
How do we make our cities attractive? Climate change, ongoing urbanization, and the demand for urban renewal imposes great challenges on cities. How do we make our cities attractive, safe, pleasant, sustainable, and resilient? Can the sewer system cope with heavy rain showers, or should we expect flooding in the streets? How do you cope with increased droughts, water shortages, irrigation demands, and pollution levels? And what can be done to counteract the effect of higher temperatures, especially in summertime? Integration of nature into urban developments is increasingly recognized as one of the leading ways in which cities can be made more attractive, sustainable, and resilient. These nature-based or blue-green solutions use urban water and green in a multifunctional way, which makes them more effective than traditional single-function solutions. Their implementation and maintenance, however, requires renewed collaboration between stakeholders. Climate-KIC, through its funding of the Blue-Green Dream Project and the Smart Sustainable Districts Programme, development and implementation of a systems approach to attractive, sustainable, resilient, and cost-efficient urban development. Our approach enables districts to exploit the multifunctional potential of nature-based solutions in a systematic and quantitative manner. Importantly, our approach recognizes that there are multiple stakeholders with different needs and caters for these by optimizing the economic and societal benefits. Smart Sustainable Districts is a group of pioneering city districts working together to deploy and accelerate the knowledge, expertise, and best practice needed to transition to zero-carbon living and build resilience into Europe's cities. The SSD network offers support and services to create the dialogue, test the beneficial impact, and help realize sustainable district-led development.
Thanks a lot, Ardo, and thanks a lot to you and the team at the Utrecht Sustainability Institute, who very humbly made me chair the webinar today, but have the ones behind putting that together and the whole webinar. So thanks a lot for your work to bring this together today. But as you know, exciting stuff, and we move to our main speakers who, after that little taster video, I'm sure you're all looking forward to hearing a lot more and in depth. So without further ado, we've got Frans van der Ven from Deltaris. Frans is an expert advisor in urban land and water management at Deltaris, and an associate professor of urban water management at the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Geosciences at Delft University of Technology. He has a PhD in hydrology, is a leading research scientist worldwide on creating sustainable cities, making them climate resilient, flood and drought proof, and subsidence free. Well, that's an interesting one, Frans. You have to tell me. I'm looking forward to that point. Sorry, just caught that. This includes research on improved concepts for urban flood and water management, other ways of urban planning, design, water quality control, blue-green solutions, and energy harvesting from water. So an awful lot in there. So we're looking forward, Frans, to you sharing with us today. So Martin from Imperial College, in a similar field of expertise as a senior lecturer in fluid mechanics, also at the Civil and Environmental Engineering at Imperial College in London. He has an MSc in Environmental Fluid Mechanics, a PhD in Applied Physics, and both of those from Delft University of Technology. Martin's research interests comprise transport processes and fluids, generally involving bounded turbulence and buoyancy effects. So right down in the technical details of how these systems work, I guess, Martin. Application areas are transport processes in urban areas, urban heat island, dispersion, microclimates, atmospheric convection, building ventilation, water quality and distribution systems, groundwater flows, and oceanography. So that's an awful lot of natural systems work. So everything from the specifics to the general. So we welcome you both. And without any more from me, I hand over. Thanks. We look forward to your presentations.
Unmuted.
Well, thank you, Tim, for this nice introduction, and I'm happy to discuss that subsidence-free later on with you, as you can imagine. For the moment, we're going to give a presentation together with Martin about attractive resilient districts with the use of blue-green solutions. The fact that blue-green solutions can be used to indeed create not only resilient but also attractive districts, and what we have done in the context of SSD so far. What I'm going to do is give you a presentation on the processes component and the tools components that support these processes. Because planning climate resilient urban environments is a matter of, first of all, the planning process, and that is why we developed the blue-green systems approach. And that blue-green systems approach indeed includes vulnerability analysis, stakeholder analysis, and the way to use collaborative planning in this whole system. But in addition to that, we also developed tools to help support that collaborative planning process. The tools including, for example, the goal-driven planning targets and the Blue-Green Dream adaptation support tool that I'm going to talk about. I will give this first part of the introduction. Martin will talk about the processes in particular, and then I will take over again to speak about the tools. Well, first, let's take a look at the challenges and vulnerabilities of the cities today. Cities face many challenges: flooding, water pollution, droughts, air pollution, the resource efficiency, crime, noise, urban heat islands. All these hazards also create a certain vulnerability to the urban environment, and well, it's certainly a trigger that we have to work with to create more resilience toward these hazards. As nowadays we can simply to accept risks to a less degree than we did in the past. One of the ways to do that is to use so-called blue-green solutions to create this resilience. And these blue-green solutions, what are these blue-green solutions? These blue-green solutions include all sorts of urban interventions that use vegetation and water to achieve a sustainable and resilient environment, and in a way create cost-effective solutions. Other names for blue-green solutions are sustainable urban drainage systems or low-impact developments, and even more different terminology is used all around the world, but we tend to use the terminology of blue-green solutions in this presentation. Well, from that moment on, Martin will take over to give a short introduction on the processes. Martin?
Thank you, Frank. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. All right. So in terms of the process, so how do you create a sustainable, resilient, attractive city? So the first thing, there's a number of challenges associated with this, and the first one is the fact that there's an incredible wealth of things that you can do. Yeah. So you can think of permeable paving, you can think of green walls, you can think of urban forests, retention roofs, and so on and so forth. And which one should you use and when? So another feature of these blue-green solutions is the fact that a single solution has many different functions. So if you think, for example, of a tree, it's not just, just nice to be around a tree and it looks nice and so on, but it provides shading both to yourself, to the building. It evaporates, which cools the environment. It reduces flood risk via the water retained in the soil. It acts as a wind barrier and so on. So this single tree fulfills this whole range of functions which are influencing the microclimate, the way you would mass your buildings. So how do you orient your buildings? How wide are they and so on? They influence the indoor comfort. Your energy consumption is influenced by it, and it influences the outdoor environment quality. So you really need a system to get the best out of these. And this system works in the following way, is that given a certain project you have, what solutions can you introduce in terms of nature-based solutions that give you more than the traditional monofunctional solution? So how can you use nature-based solutions in the best way so that you essentially have this whole range of ecosystem services that you satisfy simultaneously? So for that reason, we, during the Blue-Green Dream project, developed this Blue-Green Systems approach, which is essentially a framework for resilient, sustainable, and cost-effective urban development. So the main features are, as I already mentioned, this systematic use of synergies, right? So nature-based solutions, they provide many functions. Let's use them in a clever way so that the sum is more than the individual solutions. Importantly, if you want to know whether you're doing a good job, you need to be able to quantify this. So that's an integral part of the framework. Then stakeholder involvement is a crucial aspect, because there's many different stakeholders for every project that we tend to look at, all with different needs and so on, and they need to be catered for. So a final point of this approach is the fact that it's a pre-planning package as well. So in terms of wanting to design, say, new developments and so on, the earlier you start in the process, say, the more fluid the design is yet, the more impact you can make. Next slide, please. So this systematic pre-planning methodology consists of a number of tools. So we've got the goal-driven planning matrix, where you systematically define what you need and what there is available in a certain area. And we've got interaction matrices, where you kind of look at, these are the solutions available and how do they all interact and so on, and how can you get the most out of them. Costs obviously are an important part which needs to be quantified, and then the climate resilience. as well. Next slide, please. So here is an example of this goal-driven planning matrix. So this is a case study from a city. So there's a picture of London, but it's we've made it anonymous, so it's not London. So essentially, the city is it has a river flowing through it, and it's completely canalized, right? So essentially, the water just flows through, and there's very little function that the city derives from this. So if we come into this city, we discuss with the city council and so on, and we start setting out goals. What does the city want to achieve? And for example, for this city, they wanted to improve the attractiveness of the city, both for citizens and for tourists, to make it more resilient to climate extremes and to reduce the reliance on cars in the city centers. Right, so as a next step within this goal-driven planning matrix, these lead to targets. So what targets do you have that can make you achieve these goals? So the city said, well, we want to boost housing in the inner city. We want to reopen the inner city to the functions of the river, i.e. to let tourists and people just enjoy the river, except for just the transport of water, and so on, and so on and so forth. So then the next steps are, what are the functions, the concepts, what facilities are needed to make these things happen? And then comes the quantification phase, because how are you going to know whether you've got a good solution? So we then systematically set up this whole range of indicators for all the targets that we have. So for this example, well, you've got outdoor environmental quality indicators like thermal comfort, visual comfort, etc. Maybe the time spent outdoors, etc. And once we've got these, you get an idea of the analyses that you require to do this. Next slide, please. So what this requires and what the framework provides is then really a system to get experts together, and instead of everybody, say, talking from their own expertise and from their own islands, it forces people together, and it encourages them to work together, maybe step slightly outside of their comfort zone, and really kind of think about the city as a system, as an integrated object, and how do you make use of your solutions in the best way. And this not only is for the experts, but of course, in the same way, it's for the local stakeholders. And with that, I hand back to Frans, who will tell you more about the tools that we've developed for this.
Thank you, Martin. And let me continue indeed with the tools, if I can move my slides again. Okay, well, the tools, as I said, we developed a couple of tools in the Climate-KIC program to support this planning process, and one of the most important ones is the adaptation support tool, a tool that is meant to make an inventory what can be done in a specific area, where it can be done, and how effective that is. What we have learned in the past in all these workshops that we have been doing within SSD and outside SSD is that, first of all, it is very hard for the participants in this collaborative planning process is to have an overview of all the solutions that are available. And well, a lot of time is to be spent, I think, to get an overview, to learn about the potential solutions in a specific area, and to come to some sort of a short list, because, well, the tool contains a list of 72 different alternatives, so that is simply too much to deal with. And the first step is to make a short list of, say, 10, 15 solutions that seem attractive in a specific area in view of the problems and the vulnerabilities of that specific environment. The next step is to find out where these solutions can be implemented and how effective that is. In the example that is shown here is the example of the SSD project in Berlin, in Moabit, where together with the stakeholders, this map was drafted on all the solutions that can be seen at your right-hand side, where they can be located in the specific area. In the right upper corner of the slide, you have the overview, the summary of all the results that are achieved due to this set of measures in the specific area. And this way, this map is constructed simply by a dialogue of many stakeholders, each having their own view on what could be done where. The movie you are seeing now is a real session going on in the city of New Orleans, where the tool is used for their stakeholder engagement meetings. This is a group of experts having a discussion with the local stakeholders on what could be done in a specific area. But this is the type of dialogue that we would like to see in that very early stage of the planning process. So during that dialogue, the next question is what is the performance of all these measures? What are the metrics to quantify the performance of all these measures that are suggested in the area? And these resilience metrics could include issues like the detention capacity, peak flow reduction, the cooling effect of all these measures, groundwater recharge, water quality improvements, and of course the costs of implementation and maintenance of all these solutions, but also issues like safety, health, both public health and ecological health, and social cohesion. And maybe even for your case, you would like to see other metrics included as well, which can be arranged for. The next step is, of course, to first of all draft different alternative solutions for a plan, like the solutions we have drafted by the end of 2015 here for Utrecht. And we will see what happened to these solutions later on in the presentation that Jeanette Heckhuis is going to give shortly. So this way, the tool allows you to compare alternative plans with their performance and to simply find out what is the most attractive solution in a specific area. Once we did that, we have to analyze what the investments are, what the costs are, but also what the benefits are, because in total we want to maximize the benefits of our solutions, not only the economic benefits, but also the social and the ecological benefits. So the way the costs and the benefits are quantified are an important component of our analysis instrument. Once we made this inventory of costs and benefits, the next question is, of course, who receives these benefits? In the rows, you see the different stakeholders in a specific area, in this case in Utrecht. And in the columns, you see the different variety of potential benefits that could be achieved by the different measures. And, well, this gives an overview of who receives most of the benefits and who is going to carry the costs. So this, first of all, contributes to achieve a fair distribution of the costs of the whole investment, but also what would be a fair distribution of the benefits. And in the end, this leads to a discussion on co-investment opportunities. Co-investment opportunities that are, of course, important to in the end, realize this investment in the plan. Well, all in all, we could say that the adaptation support tool, both the approach and the tools, allow you to create these urban transitions in a collaborative way, and that the blue-green systems approach provides a platform and provides tools to, first of all, collaboratively plan and design solutions to maximize the synergetic solutions. It optimizes the master plan costing and efficiency. And it can be applied to any new development or to reconstruction projects. What is extremely important is to start very early on in the process, to start this collaborative process and this conceptual design very early in the process, because that is the time that most flexibility is still there and that different visions and views can be brought to the table a well-informed discussion can be taken. Well, and all in all, the tools have been proven beneficial for several projects in practice, both within the SSD context and beyond. So it turns out that this approach is very helpful for the different districts. All in all, there's a large potential to enhance new and retrofit projects by systematically using these blue-green solutions planning instruments. That concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Tim, the floor is yours.
Oh, there we go. Thanks a lot, Frans and Martin. That's very helpful. There are a couple of questions that have come in as you've been speaking, and they look like very good ones. So I think perhaps if we start with, well, there were two, I guess, around the quantification of the benefits. So how can one fully quantify the benefits of blue-green solutions, and a specific one as well around the safety and health benefits, and with regard to resilience metrics. But I guess you sort of, that was a really good overview and introduction, but behind the system there must be some quite detailed analysis models. Can you maybe just sort of elaborate a little bit more on how those benefits are being quantified, that then feeds up into the business case development layer?
Of course, I'm happy to explain a little further, though it is in detail. It's very complicated. I included the reference and literature already in the presentation. Maybe you noticed. But I'm happy to share that. Well, first of all, the question is which benefits would you like to quantify? We started with the resilience benefits in terms of climate change. So, flood risk reduction, drought, heat stress. And this is all done on, you say, unit performance figures. These unit performance figures are calculated based on the properties of a specific urban environment and a specific climate. So, because, well, of course, you cannot use the same performance results in Helsinki as compared to Valencia, with the difference in climate there. So that is taken into consideration. That is so the tool is to be customized for different applications in different climate zones and in different types of urban areas. As for the socioeconomic aspects, that is sort of a different story. We tried to develop a sort of rather generic way of evaluating the performance of each of these blue-green solutions, by saying that, well, simple example. Well, a green roof is in generally very attractive for ecological purposes, but it doesn't contribute so much in general to social cohesion. So you can evaluate all these solutions in their contribution to the socioeconomic performance, and that's what we did to produce a metric for each of these indicators. And again, I have to refer you to literature, and I'm happy to share that literature with you and to the ones who brought up this question, so that they can have a background on how these metrics are quantified.
Great, thanks, Frans. And so I guess, I mean, there was another question alongside that. Basically, how do you really bottom out the business case for these projects? So as you go through that initial scoping, what might you do? And as you said, what benefits do you want to focus on quantifying? But so at the end of this process, for each, do you have sort of the costs and benefits for each proposed project and that whole sort of portfolio of projects that that are identified? And so is then the business case is 95% written for you or written by the end of this process, or is there more to do?
I said, we are in a very preliminary phase of planning. Well, there is more to do and more to be quantified later on in the planning process to be more detailed. But for a very first analysis of the business case, this is very helpful for the stakeholders around the table to see what is preferred over an alternative, which alternative is to be preferred. Not that the assessment of the performance indicators is very, very detailed, but it gives you an overview of okay, well, what would you like most? And of course, each stakeholder has a different perception on what he or she thinks is important. The end result, though, is very important. It's very interesting to tell. What we have found out in practice is there's also a sort of a financial boundary often to the investment costs. But what we see in practice is that participants are willing to invest more money to get more benefits out of it, not only the economic benefits, but in particular for the socio-economic benefits. They are simply willing to invest more money if they see that is effective.
Great, thank you. Maybe I'll take one last question and then we will move on. So I'm going to pick this one here, which is the tools and the approach that you've outlined, is this a product? Is it shared Deltaris Imperial College? What is the stage of rollout? And I guess maybe putting a different twist on that is, if cities want to procure this offer or this work, maybe what advice would you give to cities when they are looking to get this sort of assistance?
Yeah, well, first of all, the Blue-Green Solutions approach is, of course, an approach is a service provided by SSD. And that service could include the use of the adaptation support tool, either in a customized or in an uncustomized version, depending on the budget that is available and the stage of the planning process. In a very early stage, you could work in a more conceptual way. In a later phase, you have to do your homework in a more detailed way. Well, in the end, as I also showed you that tiny movie from the city of New Orleans decided to have a fully customized tool for themselves. Well, that could be delivered as well, but that depends on what the client wants. So the first answer for SSD is, well, it's a service SSD provides. We can come in and provide you this opportunity. In the end, we could customize everything. We could train facilitators for the city like we did in New Orleans. And you could have your own tool, your own customized tool to support your own planning process.
Great, good, very broad, plenty of scope for different approaches or different stages. That makes a lot of sense. So thanks a lot, Frans and Martin. Let's move on to our next speaker, so Jeanette from the Municipality of Utrecht. She has a background in environmental health and is working with Utrecht Municipality as a sustainability advisor. She works on zone planning, development areas, development of smaller plots in the city. She's a member of the project organisation around the development of the new city centre around Utrecht Central Station, which has been the Utrecht Smart Sustainable District project. So welcome, and we look forward to your customer perspective on the journey so far.
Thank you, Tim, for welcoming me. I will try to inform our listeners to how we used and will continue to use the research of the SSD in our urban planning. I will start with telling you something about the city of Utrecht and the specific area we're talking about. After that, I will zoom into the research of SSD and how that contributed to our plans. This is a picture of the city center of Utrecht. Utrecht is the beating heart of the Netherlands. It's a medieval city center. It's small enough to go on foot. It's large enough to have world-class festivals, modern architecture, etc. It's at the crossroads of many roads. It's a railway hub. It's a hub for meaningful ideas and talent. Utrecht has a young population. Utrecht is very creative, inspirational, and it's a healthy, it's a growing city. On top of that, Utrecht is one of the most happy cities in the world according to the United Nations. This is the building where the municipality is. It's very near to the big railway station and in the middle of the station area, which is right now developed. This picture shows you the new development, a part of the new development we're talking about. We have a large historic city center, and we are going to make a new city center at the other side of the railway station. We choose to have more inhabitants in our city within the city boundaries and not to expand the city at the outlines. Our city has to build housing for around 25% more inhabitants in the next decennia. And it's developing from a medium-sized provincial city into a regional capital of European importance. This picture you're seeing right now is one of the early sketches from the new developments. As you can see, we're already considering blue and green elements. And this part of the city is at the moment is owned by the trade center Jaarbeurs. They have a large parking lot very near to the biggest railway station of the Netherlands. These parking lots will become available for the development by the municipality. The other part, the Jaarbeurs will stay there and they will develop it themselves. The study of the SSD was for both parts. So this is a very special project, as not only we were working together with the SSD partners, but also with the Jaarbeurs. We are going to develop around 35 houses in this area, working spaces, a lot of culture things. And the most important aspects of this area, as what I already said, it's very close to the railway station. It has to be a part of our inner city. The municipality of Utrecht has very high ambitions. We want to make a green and healthy urban environment. We want to make the area energy neutral, carbon dioxide neutral. We also want to have circular building. We want to build animal friendly. But that are only the sustainability goals. We also have other goals, so that we have a mixed area for the inhabitants, so that there are not only rich people who can live there. To be compact and vivid. We also want smart mobility there because it's so close to the railway station. So there will not be many room for cars. And it also has to have a fine city structure. Because of that, we made sure that we involved health and living, environmental and sustainability experts in our spatial planning and area development planning. We also want to do that because this is not the only part of Utrecht we are developing. So we want to use this information also in the other areas. We consider sustainability as a big part of building a healthy city. And combined with the fact that this is a redevelopment in the inner city center, these are very ambitious goals. Here I show you a little bit of the planning process. We went from the initial ideas, which I showed you the sketch before. We made choice papers in which we laid out our initial ideas and ambitions. We organized city talks for participation with stakeholders and residents. And all of that resulted in an area vision. The SSD contributed to that with research, giving us solutions and ideas, assistance at city talks, giving us facts and figures to underpin our ideas and the solutions we are making and the decisions. And after this, we are now at the moment that the area vision has to be decided on by the city council, so we are a little bit waiting for that, and in the future we're going further with the city planning in detail and tenders. This is a picture of some of the parts of the research of the SSD. in one of the scenarios, they suggested a lot of ideas of water and greens. Yeah, it's a little bit detailed, but you can see a lot of intensive green and blue roofs here. Green areas on the roofs of the jaarbeurs, green and blue connections within the area, a water square garden, rooftop agriculture. Some of these ideas we did incorporate in our preferred solution, others we are not able to do, but maybe they will come back future, or maybe they will show up in the jaarbeurs plans later on. This is the sketch we made for our part of the development. The research done by the SSD made it for the municipality possible to make informed, underpinned decisions for the area vision. It made also clear what we have to do to infiltrate and use all the rainwater falling in this area. It has made it clear to us that it's possible to infiltrate enough water, even with building in such a high density here and with a lot of streets, so that all the water can be infiltrated in this area. It also made clear to everyone involved in the process, in our organization and outside, that heat reduction is necessary so that it will not be an urban heat island, and that it is also possible in this area. So the research did make a contribution to the fact that we now have parks in the plan, that we were possible to think and discuss about adding canals in the area. It made very clear that large trees are necessary for all the different qualities. It made clear that green and water are important issues at the next planning step and in the tenders that will follow. And now something about the parks. They were in our initial ideas from the green specialists within our organization, but sometimes they were in and sometimes they were out. And because of the research of the SSD and because of the participants in the city talks, they did come back in the planning and then are a solid part of the plans. We divided the area in different plots. This is one of the plots together. The SSD did also research that. They calculated the contributions to the water retention and the heating. This was a parallel process. The SSD did research on 3 different scenarios. And in the middle of finishing the calculations on that, the municipality came with her own preferable scenario. That happened because there is a lot more involved than just green and water. All other aims we are having at this area. And also the municipality was trying to speed up the process of decision making because we have elections in the coming year. Luckily, SSD was so flexible to be able to also calculate this 4th scenario. And of course, because it was a parallel process, we also took in already aspects of their research. We, as you can see, we have green roofs until the 25 meter of height. And we have in the higher roofs, we want to have a combination of PV panels and water retention. And in the big picture of the whole area, you could see also the canals, the parks, and the green-blue links. As I said, we made an area vision, and this we did sketch the whole vision we have for the area, the headlines of the developments, and the criteria for further development. But we are only at the start at the moment. The City Council has yet to decide. That will be at the beginning of November. We have to have more detailed planning. The zone planning has to start. We have to plan the underground very careful because it will be very crowded in the underground. And there has to be some more detailed research being done by the SSD. And after all that is finished, we have to do the tenders when we give out the grounds to the developers. Then I will end with one of the tenders we already did. It's at the edge of this new development area, but we also, the ambitions we have for this whole area, we wanted that to show in this tender already. All the participants at the tenders were very enthusiastic. They showed also having high ambitions. This is the proposal we chose for further development. It's called Wonderwoods. It's a forest in a city. The greenest building, the architect from that is Stefano Boeri, an Italian architect who built a similar building in Milan. but this one is adapted to the Dutch situation of the climate. The other building is designed by MVSA architects. It's also a very green building. This building has a high rate of water retention. The buildings do need even more water than the annual rainfall in the Netherlands. They are designed to use also the water of a huge nearby building. We still have some issues to solve to come from a sketch development to a real development. But we will, of course, the aim is, of course, to keep this idea of a vertical wood inside the city intact. And this kind of goals, ambitions, we will make sure that at the end of the process, we will take that into account with all the tenders we have to do. And well, that's the end of my presentation. I hope you have got a good overview of how we use the SSD knowledge and research. Thank you. Tim?
Thanks a lot. Yep. Sorry, I was just waiting for the speaking stick to be passed back. So thank you very much for that overview. So everyone, if you've got any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat window. I guess one to start, Jeanette, for municipalities that might be at the very beginning of this journey, perhaps they're looking at established city districts that. And they're more looking at how to sort of refurbish, bring sustainable systems more to the fore and have a greater positive impact for their communities. So what advice would you give to municipalities or teams with city district projects that are starting out and entering this sort of the nature-based solutions approach, but obviously you have all elements going on in Utrecht?
Yeah, in fact, there's so many knowledge available at SSD, but also everywhere. And my advice is to use that available knowledge and to translate it to your own situation. That was my answer.
What have been some of the key, in terms of translating knowledge to your situation, which can often be the really difficult part? What have been some of the sort of key success factors in your experience so far?
Key factors is that it's quantified. The effects of the solutions are quantified, and that the solutions are combined together to calculate the combined effects. To have more ideas than the municipality can think of themselves. And especially to underpin all the ideas and all the ideas together.
And is there anything you would have done differently looking back and perhaps looking forward to the next phases?
So one thing I would like to have done a little bit different. That's to take it a little bit more evaluation along the way. It will take a slighter, maybe I hesitate to call it slower path, but to have the results combined with the urban planning was a challenge sometimes because of the speed we were trying to make in the process. So that is something that should have been a little bit different.
Okay, cool. Any other questions from the floor, I guess? It's just a comment that this is a really impressive project, and they look forward to getting copies of your slides. So yes, we'll definitely be sending out copies of the slides, and there'll be a recording of the presentation to share afterwards. So thanks for asking for that clarification. Let me just have a look to the chat window. Franz and Martin, are we able to get you back into the conversation as well at this point?
Well, I'm happy to add a bit. I'm happy to add a bit to what Jeanette said about the process. Well, the SSD process, as Jeanette said, could have been more effective. By on the other hand. Well, also the municipality is an organization with many heads and divisions. We have found out, and in a project like in Utrecht, many parties are involved with me, which means that many people are involved, and each of them is to be informed about the results. So. Well, that is part of the challenge too, I think. The whole communication of expertise and results in the process. So it is nice to have a session with 5, 6, 7 people around the table to develop a plan, but how to share the plan with the rest of the team. That is another challenge that we have found out to be intriguing. Maybe Maarten would like to add to that.
Well, yeah. So in this case, just the fact that there are stakeholders and so on, and the fact that you can have people in a small kind of group that you can easily convince, it doesn't translate to big organizations, and there's a huge kind of inertia associated with this, particularly because some of the concepts that we bring, that they're slightly new, so they might require kind of a slightly different kind of perspective and so on. Plus the fact that in order to really kind of create the sustainable and resilient cities that we're aiming to get, it really crosses disciplinary boundaries. So even for the experts, you know, they need to make a bit of a jump, and to be willing to kind of think, you know, in the kind of the areas of expertise of the other experts. So it's a formidable challenge, and I think there's a lot to do, but there's also enormous opportunities for increased efficiencies. I mean, in the projects that we've done as part of this, we found out time and time again is how much more is possible if you put a whole team of experts together and let them look beyond the boundaries of their disciplines.
So what do cities need to do?
Sorry, may I add one more thing about the Utrecht case in particular? What I liked about the Utrecht case is the synergy between the city, who is now around the table, and the Jaarbeurs as a commercial organization, which knows, well, half the assets in the area. And I think that well, SSD on one hand succeeded in getting these people around the table, first of all, so opening up the dialogue. Yet we see that we have to deal with so-called two different clients. The city has its own democratic process, whereas the Jaarbeurs organization is much more of a commercial organization, taking its own track in the planning process. And it's very, very intriguing to see how both organizations deal with the same information you put to the table. Both make use of the information, and I think it's important that a program like SSD continues to bring both organizations around the same table to continue to have that discussion on what's the best for the people of the area, rather than focusing each on their individual benefits.
Jeanette, maybe we bring you back there so from the Utrecht experience, we've got on one hand both the need to bring groups of experts together they need to work beyond their own boundaries in order to come up with stronger solutions, and then the city stakeholders a similar but different challenge. So what has helped to unlock this process in Utrecht and get these collaborations sort of blooming at least?
What helped was that we had brainstorm sessions together to have an open plan on table with all. We could set both the arbors and both the municipality could discuss our ideas without having to make decisions at that time, and that combined with the assistance of the SSD ideas, that we could have an open discussion process, an open talk. That helped the most.
And who catalyzed that at the beginning? Was that a municipality, or was it a team effort?
I think.
How did you get started?
I think the municipality, because there was this big process that the parking lots I talked about will be owned by the municipality later. So we wanted to redevelop that area. And we saw chances already with working together with the Jaarbeurs for the rest of the area. So it was our initiative to talk together.
So the city had quite a key convening role.
Yes, you could say that, yes.
Okay. A couple of other questions that have come in. So there was a question relating to the master plan, understanding that the master plan includes conversion of a major road back into a canal. Can you share a little bit more about the incentives that have led to that being planned, or that have helped to make that happen?
Now I have to correct you on that. There's not a road converting into a canal, not in this specific area anyway. But at the other side of the station development there is. That's one of the back in history. It once was a road. Then it went to a canal. Now it once was a canal. Then it went to a road when all the cars came into the city. And now we wanted to bring it back to a canal. That's big. We want. Why? I'm searching a little bit for the answer for that. We want to make the city more attractive. We want to have less cars in the inner city. So we're doing our best to have an open, nice, healthy city. And we have large parking lots at the outer skirts of the city, and aim at public transportation. And of course, bikes is a huge part of transportation in Utrecht as well. So we don't need, we plan on not needing those big roads into the inner city anymore.
Okay, but that hasn't been directly linked to the nature-based solutions for the new centre. I guess the question whether that had been part of the journey. There's also a question which I guess we can test you all on, getting a little bit away from the nature-based solutions and into the energy space, but happy to go there. So what does the heating and electricity system look like for the district that will enable Utrecht to meet the carbon and energy goals for the new centre?
Yeah, that's not an easy goal to reach, of course. We see that we have many underground, I think it's in English, it's also called WKO's, energy storage on the ground. And a good use of that, a better use of that in combination with PV panels and, of course, very good and high insulations of the building, the way you develop the buildings. Sun-oriented and all kind of measures you have to take into account. We do our utmost best at all those parts, it is possible to reach an energy neutral system. And in English it's called an aquifer thermal energy storage system. I didn't know the English word for that. And that's
Okay.
the answer, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Right, everyone. Well, it's
In addition, Tim, it is interesting to say that in addition to these aquifer thermal energy systems, they already have a lot in the center of Utrecht. They more have a conflict now than that there's a lack of systems. The fact that these canals are there, it is now studied whether we can use these canals both for harvesting energy, thermal energy, and for cooling purposes. In addition to using underground thermal energy storage, also use surface water thermal energy storage. That was investigated. It is not included in the plans so far for this district, but in a neighboring district, it is now being reconsidered again.
Thanks, Franz. What do you call that sort of activated nature-based solutions? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you're still using the water that's, but in some sort of activated way. But so a good example. Thank you. So it's just gone 2 o'clock here in London, and I guess 3 o'clock in most of the rest of Europe. So that brings us to the formal end of the webinar in the 1 hour. So thank you very much to all three speakers for your presentations today and sharing some very valuable insights. Everyone is welcome to stay online for a bit more discussion if that's useful to you. So we will be here as long as the webinar platform permits us until about past. Otherwise, if you have no further questions, then thank you very much for joining. We will be sending around the webinar recordings, video link and presentation PDFs in the coming days by email. Just to also so mark your calendar for 2 more webinars that the Smart Sustainable Districts program will host this year. They are planned currently for October the 17th, focused on citizen engagement, and the 21st of November on performance indicators for smart sustainable districts. So pop those in your diary if you can. Okay, so I think we finished the recording there. Team in Utrecht, thank you very much.